like Mike Layton comes here with expertise in stormwater plans, because the big issue we as swimmers face is the outflows. There's four different storm sewer outflows along the Ontario Place area, and so in terms of where we swim, there's Sunnyside, which is the water's quite dirty there, and because of the sand and the grit and the grime, the sand adds to the dirt. Plus, there's the sewage discharge from the Humber River and so on. So Sunnyside is not a very clean beach. And then you've got on the east side, you've got Cherry Beach, which is kind of in the armpit of the Leslie Street Spit. The water's a little murky there. And what we found is the freshest and cleanest and clearest water is at Ontario Place. On that West Island beach, because it's a pebble beach. There's no grit or grime. It's beautiful water. It's clean. It's really, really nice to swim in. And so a big concern is stormwater discharge and combined sewer discharge, combined sewer overflow. These are all issues that Mike Layton can speak to. What can we do to make our Ontario Place swimmable? So take it away, Mike.
Well, it's good to meet you. Thanks for the invite, Steve. I certainly wouldn't classify myself as an expert in stormwater. I actually see another one on the call with folks from Eat, Fish, Swim. Like there's far better people than I to give technical advice. I think if I'm an expert at anything, it's how to get in trouble at City Hall, and I certainly take I wear that as a badge of honor. For folks that don't know, I come from the environmental movement. I worked for Environmental Defence Canada before becoming a city councillor. My background is environmental planning and community engagement and decision making. I came to city council with the hope that I could make a difference on a series of files, the quality of water and our interactions with the lake being one of them. I used to be a waterfront councillor, but Doug Ford changed that. I used to be the councillor for Ontario Place. Unfortunately, Doug Ford had different plans, and when the boundaries were redrawn, turns out my place of residence was in the northern half of my ward, and which now makes me a ravine councillor, which I would say has a direct relation to stormwater, just not the same relation to your swimming. I will also admit that it was my dad who was the swimmer in the family. It wasn't me. My dad was actually quite a good swimmer and swam in Lake Ontario on a number of occasions. I did not get that gene. He signed me up for the Argonauts swim team at then Rosedale Heights or high school. I didn't go to that high school, but that's where the swim team met, and it was on the subway line. I certainly didn't perform particularly well to make the cut. So I'll admit that here to you. It's also the temperature at which Ontario is kept. Lake Ontario is kept is far too frigid for my for my delicate my delicate skin, we'll call it. I don't know, but I will say that doesn't take it away from the fact that I think we all have an interest collectively in keeping our lake clean, to make it a place where we can recreate with our families. We can go for a swim, or we can go fishing, or of course every single one of us relies on the Lake Ontario for our source of drinking water. For all those reasons, I think it's important, and the city thinks it's important. And it was under another Councillor Layton that the city launched its wet weather flow master plan back in 2006, with the goal of cleaning up both the beaches, the area concern is recognized under the by the IJC, as well as some of our other waterways. And so, looking at our combined sewers all throughout throughout our system and starting to clean them up, and then figure out better ways to catch and to hold water during stormwater events, so that we can treat it before it's released out into the lake. I will say, I think Toronto's doing a comparatively good job to other major municipalities in America. We were early to get on to the more significant treatment, and we have spent a significant amount of money tracking down and taking offline our combined sewers. But that work continues. It's not easy work, and we will get there, but I'm told by our Toronto Water staff that it's a matter of time until we get to that stage where we can completely eliminate our combined sewers, which will certainly help with as we expect to have an increased number of severe storm weather events in the city. So the wet weather flow master plan in the city of Toronto has been around since 2003, and it kind of had a long-term vision, a long-term game to how we can clean up our water systems. They are still working on various portions of it. Along with that, though, the city does have a series of other bylaws that we use in order to help address stormwater runoff and the quality and quantity of it. One thing that I was quite active in pursuing was an expansion of our sewer use bylaw to capture more chemicals. This is where industry pays, instead of buying equipment to clean up their own mess, they pay the city to. And these are for certain chemicals that are released in their industrial processes. And after 7 years of trying, we finally got them to take another step, and that's making sure that we actually were recovering the full cost of their releases, and so that they're paying for it and not the rest of us, which then gives them an incentive to decrease the amount of chemicals they're putting in the sewage system, which then can contribute to water quality in the lakes because of the combined sewer overflows. My next project is going to be a stormwater management fee, and that is it's right now when people pay their water bill, they pay for the cost of treating the water and getting it to you, and the cost of treating the water that they get from you, and the cost of stormwater management. Well, as you can imagine, like while the amount of water we're consuming is going down, we still need to clean that amount of water, but the amount of stormwater runoff, generally speaking, is increasing due to the severity of stormwater events. And so we right now, if you're a large parking lot and you don't use any water, you don't have a washroom or anything, you don't pay anything for the stormwater you create, or that is created on your site and put into a sewer system. If you're a large water user, but on a small lot, like a small food manufacturing operation, you don't create a lot of stormwater, but you're paying for a lot of stormwater management. And so we're trying to make a system that's more fair, Gesundheit. We're trying to make your system that's more fair. We're also trying to give property owners an incentive to reduce the amount of stormwater they generate. You know, I get mocked at City Hall that this is called a roof tax, or that it's not, it's naturally occurring, so it shouldn't be their responsibility. The fact is that's BS, because what happens on a site is directly related to what's built on the site, and can really have an impact on the amount of stormwater that is generated. Paved surfaces that funnel water into a sewer, for example, most giant parking lots, will contribute. Could perform better if they used green infrastructure that wouldn't take water out of the hydrological system, but allow it to remain where it falls and be filtered through more natural systems. So that's my next attempt. After 7 years of fighting for the sewer use bylaw, I needed another pet project, and this is it. The hope is that it gives an incentive for particularly large property owners to deal with their stormwater on site rather than put it in our sewer system, which then, as you all know, contributes to combined sewer overflows and, generally speaking, just nastiness of our waterways after major storm events. So it came up in the last little bit of your conversation with the last speaker. In 2015, I moved a motion to make a paddle-friendly city that actually resulted in us building some low water docks all across the waterfront through the TRCA and our Parks Division. I was hoping for a boat share system, not unlike our Bixie bike share system. But I thought kind of cool. Didn't happen, but they did build some of these docks, and in fact, it got them thinking differently about how they contribute to when they're looking at both fish habitat as well as waterfront areas in some of the TRCA and City of Toronto lands, how they look at people's access to the water. Because we have some boat launches, but for manually operated vehicles for paddling, there actually wasn't a lot of options. It was Adam Van Couverden, who was my constituent at the time, reached out to me to say he can't take his kayak out of the water from X street to X street, and this is how we figured out we could help him. And so that's where I sit. I'm not sure I've got anything else specific for you. I can answer any questions, again, not on the technical side of stormwater or the science behind it. I would defer to Mark actually on that. I see he's on the call, and I'm a big fan of Mark's work. So
Yeah, Mark is actually speaking at 11:30. So,
well, then you have an expert. It's just not me.
but now what I was fascinated by is the idea of a paddle-friendly city. As a stand-up paddleboarder and sup surfer, I very much strongly relate to the idea of these paddle-friendly docks, that are at the right height. One thing also, if you want to really push your idea with put a bit more teeth or a bit more grab into your idea, is to talk about safety. Because in addition to low docks, making it easy to get sups in and out of the water, also consider again if people fall in the water, how easy is it to swim out? How safe is the waterfront? At present, the waterfront is very dangerous because of these high embankments, which is exactly the issue I raised with Pierre Lafontaine on the renderings. Even I think it would be great to get rid of those and make it more friendly, make it more entrance and exit friendly, make it safer. If you play the safety card, you might actually get some traction with these low docks ideas. I really like the idea. And the safety card would be one way to add gravitas to the idea in addition to making it paddle friendly, make it safer.
Yeah, that's certainly something that we focused on. It's been 7 years now. So I haven't checked in, but I know that the TRCA went ahead and built a couple, and they actually did it in conjunction with not only the recreational use for paddleboarders, canoers, and kayakers, but also for fish habitat, which I thought was really, really interesting. Because they were going in and restoring fish habitat, because then these are also happen to be good places to go cast a line out. And
wow,
so
for fishing.
It just multiple benefits. It seemed to work well, but yeah, the safety was high on that list. I can just guess how difficult it would be to jump onto a paddleboard when you're 8 feet up in the air on an embankment or on a artificial shoreline.
I mean, that's what we do now is we throw our paddleboard down and then we jump down onto the paddleboard. Sometimes we miss the paddleboard and go for a swim, but that's okay. And we swim over to the paddleboard and get on. So most of the time, you throw your paddleboard over this great big high pier or edge, this big step, and then you jump in the water and swim over to the paddleboard and get on. But then getting out is a bit tough because you got to stand on your paddleboard and reach way up to this thing and pull your weight up. So for an elderly or infirm paddleboarder, it's not accessible. But it would be great if there was like that, because that's another card you could play is accessibility and equity, diversity, and inclusion. If you play EDI, safety and EDI are two things that have a lot of grab. No one can ignore you when you play the safety card and the EDI card. Think of an elderly person trying to get out of the lake. Would they be able to climb up? And if not, who's going to be liable if they drown?
Mm-hmm.
So that's your, I think that's your answer for getting your ideas heard. But I like where you're going with this idea of nice docks and fishing. Swim, drink, fish, paddle.
Good segue, Steve.
Yes. Okay, yeah. So we're so happy to have Mark Matson here. And Mark Matson is a super genius environmental lawyer, absolute polymath, modern day Leonardo da Vinci kind of thinker who really hits home on all of these points, which are making our lakes swimmable. So Mark's one of the things that I really like about the way he thinks, he said the best way to protect our drinking water is to swim in the water. And and Mike, this was a really good presentation that you gave. We're so happy to have you here, and I think it's a perfect segue into the idea that our water, conservation, TRCA, and fish habitat, and all those ideas that you raised. What Mark will often say is that fish have no rights, and what happens is that people dump pollution in the lake because the fish have no rights. But as soon as you have swimmers in the lake, people have rights. And all of a sudden, it becomes a human rights issue. Now we have to stop polluting the lake because there's people swimming in it. And that's why there's no swimming signs all around the lake. So like Ontario Place has no swimming signs all around it. It says on their website, swimming is not allowed anywhere at Ontario Place. And so we made a group called Swim OP, which is Swim at Ontario Place. And so these swim ops, in some sense, are protection of our drinking water. And so Mark was saying, he's an environmental lawyer, and I was saying, what legal grounds are we on when we swim in a no swimming zone? And so I started thinking about precarity in vessels. And I said, I love precarious vessels like stand-up paddleboard because it's not a vessel. Legally, it's considered a vessel, but it's not a vessel because it's a convex hull and there's no way you can possibly be inside it. So you're falling off of it all the time. And so when you're supping in a no swimming zone, you're going to be swimming in a no swimming zone. And ice supping is even more so because you're in a very precarious vessel that can vanish at any moment and leave you swimming. And so the whole idea, Mark's philosophy, he said, don't approach it so much on a legal ground, approach it on a more human, poetic ground. What you want to do is get lots and lots of people swimming, and then eventually they'll have to take down the no swimming signs and put the pollution problem to solution. And so if you look at the Gordy Downey Pier, Gordy Downey of the Tragically Hip, he used to basically do that. He would swim at the pier where swimming was not allowed. So originally you weren't allowed to swim at the pier, and he would swim there anyway. And so he got the idea of a whole bunch of people swimming there. And and so you've got people swimming there all the time. And eventually it's now the Gordy Downey Pier. It's now named after him thanks to a lot of the work of Swim, Drink, Fish and others. I think that pier is a brilliant work of art. It's open 24 hours a day. It's never closed. Like when you think about closing something, like if the Ontario Place closes at 11 p.m. and now an Indigenous midnight ritual, immersion ritual, or even a midnight baptism on the full moon is fairly common. So whether for recreation or for health or healing or for ritual or spiritual purposes, many people want to swim at midnight or immerse themselves or touch the water at midnight, and they're being prevented from doing so. And so if this land is not owned, a lot of people will say this is stolen land, and it's indigenous land. Land is truly not owned, then it should never close. Like imagine if I said stargazing is open from till 11 p.m. After 11 p.m., you're not allowed to look up at the stars in the sky because the sky is closed. What does it mean for a lake to be closed? You're not going to drain the lake out at 11 p.m. to keep people out. I mean, the lake, nature should never be closed. And so this is what I love about the swim pier in Kingston is it never closes. You're free to swim any time of the day or night that you want. And in many ways, this is like what we have in a lot of other countries. San Francisco, every 400 meters along this busy shipping port, one of the busiest shipping ports in the world, there's stairs going down into the ocean so you can swim. And so there's these bathing entrances all the way along this busy shipping port so that people can swim. So boats and swimmers have coexisted for years in San Francisco. And other places like Wyoming, they have their facilities open 24 hours a day. You swim anytime you want. The change rooms are heated and open year-round. So winter swimmers go in there and they have a place to change. If you want to swim at 3 a.m. in the middle of February, no problem. There's heated change rooms open. And Hong Kong, Shekel Beach, 24 hours a day open. So this whole idea that space can be closed runs counter to its indigenous roots. So Mark, as this wonderful polymath environmental lawyer who's really driving these points home, I think can really speak to these ideas of what it means to swim, drink, fish, and paddle. So take it away, Mark.
Well, thanks, Steve. It was great seeing Councillor Layton. And I just think this whole day you've got lined up, you've got some incredible speakers. And I hope to listen in as much as I can, Steve. And I know you've been the pioneer here. I remember when you came out to the Mass Swim in 2019, you've really created a connection with the lake almost daily now throughout the year, and really at the forefront of technology, water, and community. And I'm just so excited by everything you're doing and watching you out there. I stay safe. You push the envelope. But yeah, and I've gotten to know everyone here a little bit more. You know my story. I've been an environmental lawyer since 1990. Started a lot of my work, through criminal law and in the prisons in Kingston. Was corporate law, but I really wanted to represent people and do more meaningful work. I worked out of the prisons and very quickly got involved in environmental issues, particularly around Kingston. And swimmable, drinkable, fishable water was what really attracted me as a lawyer, because there were certain rights, laws, as you said, that protected drinkable water, fishable water, and swimmable water. And we started with fishable and using the Fisheries Act in Canada to protect the waters from landfills and toxins being discharged in the water that got into the food chain, and ultimately people who ate the fish, they'd get sick. And then, Walkerton came along, and the laws with respect to drinking water really are provincial in this country. And so we participated in that inquiry and really learned a lot about protecting water. And, there's a lot of improvements in Ontario and the Clean Water Act, et cetera. But the one area that, really bothered me was the one where most people experience the lake, and that's through recreational water use. And yet there were amazing laws that protect recreational water use. Provincially, Ontario Water Resources Act, federally, even though it's the Fisheries Act protecting fish, it also, if you enforced it, protected swimmers from those contaminants. But most importantly, it was this public health aspect. That isn't really in swimmable or, fishable water, it wasn't the same, but the public health have an obligation to, post swimmable water. And so started learning about the F55 rules under the Ontario Water Resources Act and beach assessments, et cetera. And we really felt that, here was a way to change the culture in Canada from, being really ignoring our freshwater responsibilities to freshwater in the world, and particularly on the Great Lakes, and being called the Rust Belt, or who'd go swimming in the Great Lakes. This was something that, maybe we fell into that rut. And in the late 60s, early 70s, we woke up and realized it's going to take a lot of work to restore our water. And 50 years later, we still have a long way to go, particularly in urban areas, connecting people to the water. And our first case with water was in Toronto and Bluffers. There's 13 kilometers of shoreline out here in Scarborough, and it's one of the most diverse and poor areas in Toronto. And the only beach is Bluffers, and it was the dirtiest beach in Toronto. And I just really felt that was wrong. And we went down, did an investigation. We used our team of retired Ministry of Environment lawyers and hydrologists, et cetera, and we brought the report to the City of Toronto in 2005. And I think they spent $2 million, but really connected, some of the channels to keep some of the stormwater out of the beach. And it's now a Blue Flag Beach. It's one of the cleanest beaches in Toronto. And I look at my notes from 2005 on a Saturday, there were 15 people we counted on the beach. And I thought that was great. People are getting to Lake Ontario in Toronto. And today, the police are at the corner of Kingston Road, 7:30 in the morning, stopping anyone else from going to the beach during the summer because it's so crowded. And so, I think of that other 13 kilometers of waterfront up here in Scarborough, and think what water monitoring, could do for the understanding of the water quality here, and to expand access to Lake Ontario out here would be an incredible thing. But then in 2018, and to get into Ontario Place and I went out there in 2018, and it was after the Gord Downey Pier had opened in Kingston. And I just had a moment where I stood out there at Ontario Place and looked out over the lake, and the water was so clean and deep and cool. The wind was coming in off the lake, and I just felt this incredible feeling of carelessness, and like I was transformed to anywhere in Canada or the world. I just felt this wilderness, and I felt this connection to that lake like I hadn't felt before. And since then, I've really wanted to see Ontario Place, which is public lands, opened as a swimmable beach in Toronto. It would be great for Toronto, whether it's provincial or private, whatever, but it would be the first new, swimmable waters in Toronto in over 50 years. And so we started sampling there. And you can find we sample weekly. The sample results are on SwimGuide, theswimguide.org. You know that we created that platform. We monitor water quality, I think, at over 8,000 beaches now in 12 countries. But it was invented for here in Toronto. And that platform will show you the data, water quality data that we've collected at Ontario Place. More recently, we started doing it in the winter. And I just want to take you through some of that data there, Steve, because I think it's really enlightening to know that, during the summer, Ontario Place is some of the cleanest water we found in Toronto. And you'll see that it's almost always below 100 quality form units of E. coli per 100 milliliters, which is the provincial water quality objective in Ontario. And when we started this January 28th, the E. coli at Ontario Place was 2,183. Which was 20 times the recommended level. On the 9th of February, it went down to 386. This is the geometric mean. 16th, 143. 22nd of February, 163. And then it started in March. 23 colony formed units for 100 milliliter, then 23.2, then 2.5. And last week, it was 1.7. Some of the cleanest water we ever seen ever in sampling in Toronto for over 10 years. And, that's almost drinkable water. At 1.7 from an E. coli point of view. That's how clean the water is out there right now. And so we think, it just underscores that, water quality is like the weather. It changes regularly, particularly around major cities where there can be work being done on stormwater, sewage, etc. And these things need to be monitored, and the information around what's being discharged from pipes needs to be shared with the public. We have the technology, as I say. I know, when Britney Spears, drops her next album within 10 seconds of that coming out. And yet I don't have any information other than what we provide about the water quality across Toronto's waterfront. And there's no need for that anymore. We know we have the improvements in sampling and monitoring. We know we can do real-time monitoring. Kingston has real-time monitoring of every one of its pipes that discharges into the lake. It's online. It's open, so anybody can go to Kingston and see the 80 pipes and see whether they're discharging right now or not, when they're discharging and how much they discharge. I think all cities should do that. Better water monitoring, more than just the E. coli and the bacteria testing we do. All of this information does three things. One, it protects public health. People need this information to protect themselves, and by protecting themselves, it also, increases that connection to nature. And we all know how important that is for health and wellness now. You experience that. Just, I know Steve went down and swimming and what it means for you, and some of your swimmers. They talk about the public health benefits, but also it protects the environment, wildlife. I think you sort of mentioned it, that the fish in the water won't speak for itself. Humans have to speak for it. So if it's not safe for humans, that means it's not safe for the birds you see out there, the fish, the animals, the dogs that you bring out there that drink the water. There's so much more than humans out there. So we need to protect the water for ourselves, so it's protected for others. And third, it's just, for the users and that cultural connection we have to the lake. It builds that connection that Toronto is the freshwater capital of the world. We are, surrounded by freshwater, groundwater through the Oak Ridges Moraine, the ravines and the watersheds and the rivers that run through our city. 9 big ones currently in Toronto, from the Credit all the way across to the Petticoat and everything in between. And then, of course, the Great Lake at the bottom where it runs into, where we get our drinking water. We don't get it from groundwater like New York, et cetera. We get it right from the lake. So everything we're mixing in the lake, ultimately, although diluted, can contribute to emerging threats and worries in the future. And so there's so much benefit of having swimmable water at Ontario Place. We need the data, which we're collecting now. We have an understanding of what it is possible there. We think the City of Toronto is doing great work around, the $3.5 billion investment in separating sewers. I think they have 90 CSOs. Those are combined sewer overflows in Toronto. And they want to separate them all over the next 20 years. what I say to the city and to others is while we're doing that, let's take some interim steps to help. Let's get better monitoring of all our waters. Let's share that with the community, and to protect public health and to support the users. But also, I think it's really important that we recognize where these CSOs are and make it more transparent to the public what's happening. You've talked about Ontario Place. Why would it go from such high E. coli a couple months ago to such low now? Well, we've studied and you can go on Swim Guide and you can go to our environmental health and safety survey and it shows you where the CSOs are. But, there's one of them, the closest CSO to Ontario Place is called, we've got it numbered as B. It's 0.8 kilometers away from Ontario Place. And it is the largest CSO in the city of Toronto. So of the 90 they have, that's the one that's the biggest CSO they have. It's been, over the years, I think we've got data back to 2013. The last couple of years, it's been harder to get the data because of COVID and stuff, and I don't know if it's available. But, I'm sure it'll prove again to be the largest CSO in the city of Toronto. And if it's the largest CSO in the city of Toronto, it only stands to reason, given that Toronto probably has the most CSOs and most discharges into the lake of any city, more than Montreal or Vancouver, that this could be the largest CSO in the country. So I think it needs to, if we're going to move forward with our vision at Ontario Place, the city of Toronto could do a lot to collaborate with everyone and make this happen in a very, positive way. And I think they want to, and I think they will. I think, it's just a matter of working with all the different partners to ensure that Ontario Place, for all Ontarians, Canadians, tourists, and Torontonians, the Indigenous communities, represents that high standard of what freshwater should look like, what it should feel like, and how it should, how we can interact with it. So, that's where we're at. We're really excited. I love all your guests on today. It's great to bring attention to that strip, that western beach that you've been swimming at every day for years. Well, not every day, but most days. And I can hardly wait. And I want to jump off something. I know everyone talks about beach and walking into the water, but the Gord Downey Pier has all those features for, older, younger, good swimmers, poor swimmers. But it has this spot where you can go jump into 25 feet of deep, cool water. And I think Canadians, we see ourselves as jumpers. We like to jump in the water, maybe because it's a little colder and stuff, but we're getting used to cold water too and really enjoying that too. But I love the idea of being able to jump in the lake. I think it's not the pier really that's the vision. It's that feeling of being carefree and connecting to nature when you jump into the water that I'm really pointing at as the true goal here, the true objective. And, when I point to the moon, I'm not pointing at my finger, I'm pointing at the moon. And I think when I point to what we're trying to do here, it's not the pier. It is that feeling that we all experience when we're that close to wilderness and nature and water. And I think it's possible within walking distance of downtown Toronto.
Wonderful. That was an absolutely wonderful talk. I mean, one thing about that pier, we all love jumping in the water, and we had that designed for a pier with 1 meter increments where you could jump from 1 meter, 2 meters, 3 meters, 4 meters, and really understand head, kind of a math, physics, for fun, for all, like a teaching pier. But the thing is, when we make all these great destinations, like what we're having at Ontario Place is going to be wonderful, with another beach and with a subway stop that goes directly to Ontario Place, all these developments. My concern, though, is that it'll be crowded. And talk about the police blocking people from beach access. Upon what grounds legally can the police stop people from getting in the water? People want to swim.
It's a good question, and I hear that a lot. A lot of people like it, the privacy, and it's a lost spot. Like, people tell me about the Leslie Spit. It's not swimmable out there, but they love being alone. And you talk about bluffers. They're not stopping people from going down, walking, hiking. The buses going down. They have a TTC bus there now, which is really great. It's the cars. There's no room in the parking lots. They're full.
Oh, okay.
So they have to stop the cars from turning. Yeah, they have to stop the cars from turning off Kingston Road because there's nowhere for them to park. It's so crowded down there. It's amazing.
The other thing that we really need at Ontario Place, and I've heard this from our 900 members or so have voiced the concern of parking. That Ontario Place is a flat fee. It's $15 a day, and sometimes on special days it's $25 a day. And for people who are just coming down for half an hour for medical reasons, they need that dose of cold water, whether it's for mental health
Yeah.
or physical health of the shoulder injury. And so they're coming for half an hour. I do think the parking situation needs to somehow be addressed so there's affordable, voluminous parking, like massive amounts of
Well,
parking for short visits right at the beach. So people who do drive, like disabled people who can't run, I run to the beach, so it doesn't affect me that
yeah,
much. But
it,
for the elderly who need that swim, they need
yeah,
a place to park.
it's a bigger question. I mean, there's so many ways, to look at that, Steve. Because when I was a kid, we come to Toronto and go to the X. The lake wasn't swimmable. There wasn't a pier, free place I could go and go swimming. We had 7 kids. We would have, because we couldn't. By the time my mother paid for parking, and we went into the X, we had no money for the rides. So I know if we could have got a free swim across the road in clean water, we all would have gone there. Parking down there is just the problem. It's a huge issue, and it's expensive. And I hope with the rail line, the TTC, the buses, that there will be that public transit to get people to the lake. Because if there's one thing I can say is that the lake, you can never put too many people in the lake. It's just there's too many people. We see that at the Gord Edgar Downey Pier. It is so popular, and there needs to be. It needs to be organized and respected, and there has to be a culture. And I feel like the Gord Downey Pier has that culture of looking after one another and supporting each other, and not, creating, a space where you feel like it's just, you've lost your connection to the water because there's too many people. I hope the same thing will happen with this, is that Toronto will come to respect it, revere it. People will use, not drive down unless they have to. Maybe in terms of those who can't or have to drive, maybe we have to find ways to accommodate that. Because you're right, they're going to want to go and have their own baptism in the water, their own connection. They're going to want to go down there and be part of that history that Toronto has. The great Marilyn Bell in 1955, and there's Marilyn Bell Ladder down there. She was a 15-year-old girl, swam across Lake Ontario, and no one thought it was possible. And she was the first to do it. And she's a real supporter of the work we do and Swim Drink Fish. And she always told me that, people said she couldn't do it, but her coach would take her to that ladder down on the waterfront that's still there, and made her climb up that ladder every day. And she wondered, why do you have me climbing up this ladder every day? And he said, because you won't know that you're done swimming the lake until you climb up that ladder. So when you're asked, I can't make it, I can't do it, all Marilyn would think of, well, I haven't climbed the ladder yet. And she had climbed that ladder for 2 years every day. So in her mind, she was trained to, she's not done until she climbs the ladder. And that's still down there on the water. And it's amazing to me to think of that history that we have with Lake Ontario. And it's and you're right, it's our drinking water, it's everything to us. And we are the freshwater capital, and yet we don't have a culture yet of using it. And I think we're going to develop it. I think there's going to be fits and starts, and as we go there, we're going to have to figure parking and this and that. And it's just great that we're moving in this direction right now. And so many of my friends, there's so many worries about what might happen over time there. And I just say, keep remembering what we're doing here. This is really transforming, allowing Toronto to grow.
Mark, one of our listeners has asked a question. Any idea why the quality is so high at the moment? Why is it that Ontario Place water is so clean? I mean, my own intuition is the lack of sand. It's a pebble beach. It's crystal clear, and the fact that it's out away from the mainland. It's out on an island. You almost feel like you're in Muskoka or something when you're there, because it's
there's a bunch of reasons. One is because it's way out there, away from the pipes. So it's out in the lake. It's a really interesting spot where the water goes so deep so quickly, as you know, because I know you dive under the water. And, there's some work that needs to be done. There's some old steel and rebar and, safety reasons needs to clean up.
We've actually gotten rid of most of the steel. We pulled up most of anything I couldn't pull out myself. I swam down and tied a rope to and got a whole bunch of people on shore to pull, and we got it out of there.
That's great. And then the other thing is, the reason why the water quality changes is because if you look at the Toronto CSOs, and you can find that on Swim Guide if you go to our environmental health and safety survey. It's linked on the page for Ontario Place. You'll see our results. But there are some major outlets where the sewage comes out. And so I don't know if your listeners know, combined sewer overflows, they're old pipes in the cities that contain half the pipe is really the stormwater when it rains, and that goes into the lake. The other half is the sewage that's being transported to the sewage treatment plant. But when it rains, and we don't build these types of pipes anymore, but when it rains, the two commingle. And the sewage treatment plant can't take that quantity of water. So it has to discharge everything. So it gets discharged into the lake. And there's 3 of those along the shore to the west of Ontario Place, and there's 1 to the east, and there's 9 in the inner harbor of Toronto. And there's 90 of them throughout Toronto, throughout its rivers and basins. So what happened is, I suspect, I love to sit with the city of Toronto, but I suspect that during the winter, some of the protections they put in place for swimmable water in the summer, like that big overflow tank they have, I think I've shown you that one right over by the Princess Gates, right across the street. It's 33 stories underground. Maybe they aren't operating it because they weren't as aware how many swimmers are out there at Ontario Place. And, I suspect, Steve, you and the other swimmers, by getting out there in the water, it's really alerting to the city to the, they might have to change some of the procedures around the area so as not to surprise you with contaminated water. Otherwise, if it was, if there were no CSOs there, that water there at Ontario Place is as pure and clean as we've sampled. And we sample across the Toronto Islands. We sample all throughout Toronto, 180 different places, and SwimGuide collects data from over hundreds of affiliates, public health officials, as well as citizens. And it's really great to see that type of clean water, particularly on Ontario Place. It really incites me to want to go down there swimming as well, because I feel like I could really get the most out of it.
Well, the water there sounds really good. Like my hydrolophone needs clean water. It doesn't work very well on tap water because the chlorine creates the abrupt changes in the speed of sound with the entrained gases.
Wow.
But you pull water out of Lake Temagami, it sounds really good on the hydrolophone. Same with Ontario Place. It's like Lake Temagami.
Beautiful.
It's really good clean water. It sounds good,
That's good information. I want to make a pitch before it's over here, Steve, just because I know your listeners. Maybe I'll share this too later. I think it's probably recorded, right, the whole show, because there's so many great interviews. But just, a shout out and a request to some of your, more tech-minded listeners and followers. It's just, I have a vision 5 to 10 years from now that, we'll get water quality data like we get our weather data in the morning, and media can use it and scientists can use it. And I think the reason why we're going to have that is because things are changing so quickly. Even now for E. coli, it's 24 hours. We use the old model of the IDEX machine. There's some new models that are much quicker, and with PCR testing, you might understand what that is. I don't.
Yeah.
Result of the COVID surveillance and sewage and the relationship between public health and water utilities, there's a lot more knowledge about how to sample easily, get information quickly, and that types of information, when shared with the public, can bring about such change. And we understand where to put our money and how to deal with the problems more effectively. We're currently we're blind, and there's no reason for that. With technology, with sharing platforms, and with the importance of water to our lives, drinkable, swimmable, drinkable, fishable water, I think we're going to see an information revolution over the next 5 to 10 years, which will really change the way we protect and restore our environment. And I know you've got a lot of people who think about that sort of stuff, and people think I'm, somehow I understand technology. Let me tell you, I don't. I understand its power. I'm really a lawyer, and I understand the laws, and I understand how to collect evidence, and I understand how to, and the volunteer sector and people, how they can all work together. But we're still trying to, improve SwimGuide, the data, improve how we collect data. I'd love to see a water monitoring hub, a world-class one on the city's waters. I'd love to see monitoring right across the whole waterfront, not just at beaches. I'd love to see more data about what's being discharged into the lake, into our drinking water, on a real-time basis like Kingston. And if we have that type of transparency and knowledge and sharing of information, all the problems we've been plagued with in our harbors, in our rivers, in our lakes, we can start making a real effort at correcting them. Because
I think we can.
There's
we've
no
basically built the world's most advanced lock-in amplifier.
Yeah,
And,
and
and
everyone
it's
else
right
wants it
now.
too. The public will demand it because there's no reason any longer for living in the dark. I get it why it was 1960, 70, 80. Now we know the problems, but why do we continue going forward with so little information? I know people are worried about giving the public the information. Oh, they're going to make a big deal out of it. Oh, they're going to misinterpret it. Well, that is, those are false excuses. That's false.
Yeah.
We need to
Well, I
move
think the way
forward.
to take it into our own hands is to measure it like we're building eyeglasses that sense water. And so
Right, but we
as
need
soon as,
data that the public, like they have simple questions like, can I eat
yeah,
the fish? Can I swim in the water? Well, we can tell you whether you can swim in the water what the water quality was 24 hours before, and we do it with the city just at the beaches.
yeah,
But
too
I'd
much
love to have
delay. You
that
want
right
to know if
across
it's
the whole
going right
city.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So on that happy
anyway.
note, we've got a swim right now. So
Oh,
we're
great.
going to
I'm going to.
depart for a swim at Ontario Place, and you could join us if you're all
Well, I
welcome.
can't join Steve. I got to tell you, I had a little medical thing, and I've got some. I had to have some things, stitches, and it's too much sun and things, so I'm not allowed to go in the water for 3 to 4 weeks. So that's why I haven't been taking you up on your offer to go swimming. But I'll be there, maybe when the water warms up in May, and I'll be there and looking forward to it.
Yeah, today we have a spiritual healing led by Youngblood,
Oh,
Mohawk,
nice.
Indigenous, and Candace from Mississauga of the Credit. We're going to be doing an ancestral spiritual warrior cleansing ritual and ice water swim at 1 o'clock. So we're going to depart for Ontario Place now. I'm going to run there. Some people are arriving on foot. And then we're going to do the swim op. And then I'll probably get a ride back with somebody, so I should be back here by 2. The other issue that we talked about cars and driving and everything is carrying things. Like if there were lockers that people could rent to leave their gear, like you could rent a locker to store a sup or paddles and things like that. That would really help a lot reduce the car traffic, because a lot of reasons people drive is because they just have too much to carry.
I totally agree, and I think Mr. Fontaine, or who you had earlier, the swimmer and the coach, and there's so many ideas that I know that those who are investing and looking after it there's so many great ideas that they can pick up on, and that it helps everyone. And I believe that there's that willingness to collaborate moving forward. I hope the City of Toronto, province, the proponents, I hope everyone keeps their focus on what we're trying to do here is connect people to Lake Ontario. That's what Ontario Place was meant to do originally. It was meant to give people who didn't have cottages a place to go and connect with the lake. That's what Bill Davis said. And so here we are. The vision's very close. And let's just get let's make those changes and allow the benefits to take place. So I'm just really excited about it. And all your ideas are just so great, Steve, and I'm sure people are going to, everything you're talking about today, I think will be a reality in 5 years. So I just really encourage you to keep doing it. Yeah.
So anyway, I'm taking off my swim so that I can go for a swim.
Good for you.
Machine. So I'm going to put this away, and we're ready to roll. Should be there by 1.
Yeah,
the weather.
I got that shirt on. You see that? Connecting people
with
water, swim, drink, fish. And we got that because it used to say, don't swim, don't drink, don't fish. We want to get rid of those. We want to get rid of the don'ts.
Yeah. And, the more that the weather outside is frightful, the more that the swim is delightful.
Oh, well, I sort of agree with you on that. Swimming.
Like we swam when it was minus 21 degrees with a wind chill of minus 35. That was one of the best swims we had, because everybody said, don't go outside unless you have to, because there's an extreme cold alert. So what did? We went for a run and a swim.
Good for you. And just keep collecting data, keep all your information, how often you go, the temperature of the water. I know you got Steve Hulford coming. That's another collection of data we can get, is temperature of water on real time in local areas. All of this data that we're collecting, we're able to somehow, archive it and share it. It can all be used moving forward to protect public health, to protect the environment, and to increase the enjoyment and use of our Great Lakes. So stick with it. Oh my Lord, you probably have, that's like a cyborg goggles.
Yeah, this is the Smart Swim. I've got 7 of these, so if anybody wants to
Wow.
borrow one of these underwater virtual reality, underwater augmented reality, what we want to ultimately do is have E. coli counts showing spatially. So you can see what the E. coli count is where you actually are now. Ideally, we'd love to do some inferencing with the
Wow.
machine learning lock-in amplifier, but we do have these Smart Swims here. So if anybody wants to join and do underwater augmented reality today, together with the indigenous ritual cleansing. And a lot of the indigenous people that we're collaborating with are doing AI and machine learning and combining indigenous tradition with AI. So join us, even if you don't swim, if you just join us to kind of hang out and catch the.
Yeah, I can do. I've done that a couple times with you, but I always feel like the odd person out standing there on the beach. But it's so
No,
beautiful.
there's a few people. There's a few people who, like, you could do some documentation.
Well, you met Isabel, and some of our team, our samplers are down there. They're swimming, and great people, and really, I'm really glad you've really welcomed them and you see them sampling and stuff. So that's great.
Yeah. So on that happy note,
Okay.
I'm going to take off.
Thanks for the invite. And what a great, just what a great show and information, and what a great community you're building, Steve. Congratulations, and say hi to Steve Hultford for me this afternoon.
Yes, he'll be speaking this afternoon on some of these exact issues. So it was wonderful to have you on board, and let's stay in touch and make that pier a reality.
Yeah,
Pier
we can get some swimming. Kingston's now building swimming platforms too, by the way. They're like little,
really?
Yeah, they're floating rafts. So
wow.
A lot cheaper than a pier. So they're building they've got a proposal for rafts now, swimming rafts that they can connect to different areas.
How many swimming rafts could we put here? Because that would be the answer to capacity limitations. Just put a whole bunch of swimming rafts.
Yeah, so if you go to the City of Kingston's website, you see so many great things. You'll see that proposal coming forward. In addition to the pier, and you also you'll see, if you want to check out the before you go data around their pipes. It's really interesting to see the technology that their gas company made for the water utility to increase transparency around sewage. So it's really great people down there at Queens working hard to make that connection.
Wow.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Talk soon.